The Mike Haridopolos Show is sponsored in part by Appliance Direct, Duke Spine Institute, SpaceCoastDaily.com, and Space Coast Medicine Magazine.
Hi, I'm Mike Haridopolos, and welcome to our show. Along with Space Coast Daily, we want to bring you inside information, the wonderful things that are happening right here in Brevard County. For example, tonight we're at Geoff Bodine's Honda. He runs a very incredible business, providing the best in Honda products around the state, in fact, around the world. But this show is all about people, inspiring others to do better, but more importantly, telling stories. Brevard is an amazing place with amazing people, and I've been blessed to meet so many of them with interesting stories to tell, to inspire others to get more involved in the community and to make a better life for themselves. Tonight, we're going to be talking about motorsports. You might wonder, why is the former president of the Senate talking about motorsports? Because I love it. I love NASCAR, I love the speed, I love all the associations where it's about competitive spirit. It's about one-on-one. It's about taking on danger and winning. Florida is an amazing place with Homestead Racetrack and, of course, right down the road, Daytona International Speedway, the home of racing. So tonight we have two incredible guests. One, former Daytona 500 winner Geoff Bodine, and, of course, our United States Congressman and race driver himself, Bill Posey. So tonight, in the next few months, let's enjoy a conversation across Brevard County, talking about the inspiring people that make this county so incredible, and so you too can learn about our great state and our great community. So welcome to the show. Our inaugural guest is a NASCAR legend, 1986 Daytona 500 champion, Geoff Bodine, right here at the store. Geoff, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks for being here and being in our Honda store here in Melbourne, Florida. We're glad you're here, and hopefully I can add to the show, tell some stories that folks haven't heard. I like to be like the old Paul Harvey, tell the rest of the story, so hopefully they'll enjoy it.
Well, we'll look forward to that. First things, this is Jeff Gordon's last season. He is the marquee of Hendrick Racing, but you were the one who started in Hendrick Racing, Rick Hendrick. Tell us how you and Rick got involved in the sport, and of course now he leads that sport.
Yeah, that's right. I was Rick Hendrick's first driver, Hendrick Motorsports, and Rick was always interested in racing. He actually traveled up north to watch me race, not specifically me, but the modified cars, and so he watched me race when he and I both were younger. And but he moved south and opened up a couple car stores, and he was in drag racing, boat racing, but he got an idea of getting into NASCAR. And so he contacted crew chief Harry Hyde, famous crew chief, won a lot of races in NASCAR, and said he wanted to put this team together. Well, who are we going to get to drive? They actually interviewed the late Dale Earnhardt, but Dale was tied up and happy where he was at. They even talked to Richard Petty. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. Richard was pretty satisfied where he was at. But Harry Hyde said, hey, let's call this Bodine kid. He's pretty good at it. He's looks like a winner. And so they called me up, and I went down to one of his stores, City Chevrolet in Charlotte. And of course, back then we didn't have these cell phones or any instant communication needs. We had to dial up phone or put a quarter in. And so we had our little meeting, and right away I wanted to drive for the team, but it wasn't about Rick Hendrick. It was about Harry Hyde.
Sure.
He's this famous crew chief. I said, he's going to help me learn how to win races. And Rick Hendrick, he was just, I didn't even know the man, but Harry said he was a great guy, and I believed Harry. So we went through the meeting, and I said, well, I want to be your driver. And so Rick said, well, let Harry and I talk about it, and we'll give you a call later. And I got thinking, if I walk out this door without an answer, it might end up being the wrong answer. They might find someone else. I said, well, Rick, you mind if I wait out in your lobby for the answer? And that impressed him so much that 5 minutes later he came out and shook my hand and said, you got the job.
Wow, it's a great story. Perseverance.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. It's perseverance, but it's also the fear of if you leave someone, if you don't get the answer right away, it might not be the right answer. Plus, yeah, it showed that I really wanted this opportunity, and that's important in life. You've got to show people you really want to do something, and hopefully they'll reach out and help you do it.
It shows some pretty good business acumen as you're showing right now as well.
Yeah, well, I have a partner in this Honda store, AJ Hires. It's a great man. I think you know him, and so yeah, he came up with this idea actually.
Well, I remember when I was at Stetson University, and the idea Days of Thunder. They actually filmed in DeLand when I was to Stetson. I remember all the girls were going wild for Tom Cruise. Now, I know you had a little bit of a hand in that story, now a famous movie talking about NASCAR. Could have brought it to the mainstream. How did you all get together in this idea?
Well, do you guys want to know the rest of the story, the real story of the Days of Thunder? I'm going to tell you. Rick Hendrick was friends with Paul Newman, a great road race driver, and Paul went to Rick and said, hey, I'd like to drive the big track at Daytona. I've never done that. And Rick said, well, come on down. We're going to test in January before the Daytona 500. Come on down and we'll bring a car for you and you can take some laps. Well, he showed up with this up-and-coming movie star named, Paul was his mentor, Tom Cruise. And so it was my job to show him how to drive the track, the groove and some pointers and all that. And they used one of my late model cars for that opportunity. And of course, back then there were no restrictor plates, so a late model went over 190 miles an hour. Well, we had confidence that Paul could do it, but when it came to Tom's time, we were all like, please, please don't crash this car. You know, he had a little wild reputation. Sure. Well, we made it through the first day, okay, and we went next door to the Olive Garden to have dinner. They had booths there, so nobody knew we were there. And we're chatting, and Paul's here, and Tom was across from me, and I said, you know, guys, I'm sitting with two famous movie stars that love racing. You know, we have the old movie Grand Prix, James Gardner, and these old racing movies. We need a new, up-to-date racing movie. Why don't you guys make a movie? So I planted that seed in Tom Cruise, 4 Days of Thunder. Didn't get any credit for it, and I have witnesses to that fact, though. Father-in-law and Rick's father was there, and a couple other folks. But, of course, the movie at first wasn't a success, but once people started watching it, it's become a huge success, and it really does depict what goes on in racing. Sure. It's Hollywooded a little bit. You know, they have to spice it up. But and I'll tell you one more: the two main characters, the rough guy was modeled after late Dale Earnhardt. Sure. Well, actually three, and the crew chief was Harry Hyde, yep. Harry Hogue. And Tom's part was two drivers, the late Tim Richmond. You know, handsome, young, single, playboy, great driver. And he was my teammate when he was still alive with Rick Hendrick. And the other part of Tom's part was me. I was the guy that battled Earnhardt, the bad guy all the time. And in the 80s and early 90s, that's what we did. We put the show on for everybody. So all the racing stuff was about Earnhardt and I. And all the girl stuff was about Tim.
Well, right around that time period, you win the biggest race, the Super Bowl of racing, the Daytona 500. I mean, can you even put into words to the viewers what it's like to not only be in the race, not only compete in the race, but to hold up that trophy?
You know, I did it quite young in my career. And I used to come to Florida with my parents in a station wagon with my sister to watch the Daytona 500, sit in the infield and watch it. And on the way home, I'd tell my parents, because I grew up at a racetrack. My folks, grandfather built a racetrack when I was a year old. And I started driving little racers when I was 5. So I was around racing, had uncles that raced. So I wanted to be a racer. So on the way home, I say, one day I'm going to come down to Daytona. I'm going to race in the Daytona 500. Of course, they started laughing. You know, how is a kid from Chemung, New York, a farm kid, ever going to get to Daytona and race? And, you know, thank God gave me the talent. He gave me the opportunities to do that. And he gave me the direction where to go to get the right opportunities. And, you know, I finally did make it. It's incredible.
You're making that final turn, turn 4. You're in the lead. What went through your mind? As a young kid, was it just a moment where who's behind you? What's going through your mind?
I couldn't see very well. Tears were flowing. Oh yeah, you cried the last couple laps. As soon as I saw Earnhardt run out of gas, you know, it was over then. I knew I had it. We'd saved gas, and he used a lot of gas trying to catch me. And so when I saw him pull off, I knew, you know, we've got it. So I slowed up. I was following Benny Parsons, I believe, and just following him around. And yeah, it was. When I pulled in Victory Lane, and my wife came up to me, and you know, we said we did it. What do we do now? You know, I thought my career was over, because that was what my career was about, to someday to get to Daytona and win the Daytona 500. So I thought, well, maybe my career's over, but didn't take long to figure out I just wanted to win more.
Good deal. Well, I invested, it was talking about kind of the bookends of the highs and the lows, both at Daytona. We were talking about it earlier. I remember watching, my kids actually watched your crash in the truck race in 2000. I mean, again, same type of thing. What's going through your mind? What do you remember? Walk me through that.
Well, what I remember is we were going to win the race. It was the first time they raced the truck series there at Daytona. No restrictor plates. We were flying. We had a very fast truck, and I had to make a pit stop. We had a tire go flat, so I had to go to the rear, but I came back to the front, and I caught their lead group, and Kurt Busch was in on it, and some other trucks, and I can't remember all the names, but and the lap before, I just told my crew, don't worry, I can pass these guys anytime I want. I'm being careful. Well, the next lap, it didn't look like I was being careful. They got together in front of me, and they slid right in front of me, and I hit them, and it threw me up into the catch fence at 190 miles an hour. So I remember all of that developing. When you hit something going 190 miles an hour, it's going to knock you out. So through all the tumbles and crashes, I was unconscious, and I wasn't even breathing when they got to me several minutes later. You know, it was a pretty dramatic crash.
You were saying you remembered something that you'll never forget.
Well, you know, if you've seen the video, if you watch it, you realize that your first thought should be, how do you survive? Yeah. You know, and that's what I thought when I saw the video. How did I survive? And a little voice came to me, God said, hey, it was me. And during that crash, my father came to me. And he was sick when he passed, but he looked great when he came to me. He was smiling. He had a hat on, and he always had a hat with their 3 sons on it, because Brett, Todd, and I all raced together. So he always wore this hat. But he was smiling, and I looked at him and said, Dad, I'm coming to see you. He said, no, it's not time. You have more to do. So I still get chills, and it's still, you know, I say it like it doesn't bother me, but that's something, of course, I'll never forget. And that was my take, is God telling me through him I wasn't going to die, and there's more to do. And guess what? I'm out here doing more.
You sure are. Well, you know, you think about, again, I'm bringing it all back to Daytona, not just because of Speed Week, but a lot of things happened there. We all know about the following year, the loss of the late Dale Earnhardt. But you two were the fierce competitors. I love you two because you can relive so many of these races. Norks, Wilkesboro, there's so many you and Dale Earnhardt Sr. were racing. What was it like? I mean, was it a love-hate relationship? Was it hate-hate? Was it you guys loved the drama? I mean, what's going through your mind when you see Earnhardt behind you, and he probably looked back and saw you behind him at times?
Yeah. You know, at first, when I first came down, he'd been here a while, and we're friends. We went to dinner together. My kids went to their house at the lake, and they raced go-karts with Dale Jr. and Kelly, and you know, everything was fine. Well, as soon as I beat him, that went away. No dinner dates, no invites, and but Dale was a fierce competitor. Yeah, he would do just about anything to win. And we all know that. Yeah. Not saying anything because he's not here. If he was here, I'd be saying the same thing. And I actually did tell him that many times. Yeah, you don't care about anybody. You just want to win. But off the track, he was a giving, caring person. He gave a lot to a lot of people that needed help, and so he's a great guy. But when he put that helmet on, I don't know what happened. I think his helmet was too tight or something, because he drove like a wild man.
Oh, was he the toughest man you ever drove against, or was it someone else? I mean, you were kind of caught two folks. So you got Earnhardt, you got Gordon come along. I mean, who did you not like racing against, and who did you like racing against?
Well, you know, when I was racing, I didn't like any of them. I didn't even like my brothers. No, I did. I love my brothers.
Well, I know about the crash at Indianapolis. Was the nicest thing you did with your brother.
Yeah, my $1 million brother, I call him. It cost me $1 million. But Dale, yeah, he was the toughest. You know, and it's hard to say who's the best, who's the toughest. In every era, we have eras. Sure. It's like basketball, football. Who was the best basketball player? You can't just say Michael Jordan. Yep. There's a whole bunch of great ones through the years. In his time, Earnhardt was the best and the toughest. Gordon, he went through his time, he was the best. Jimmy Johnson's done that. Cal Yarborough, but they've all done it. Yeah. Cal Yarborough was a tough son of a gun as a race driver. He didn't have any neck, You know, he was just a bull, and he'd never slow down. Didn't matter how hot it was or how tough it was. So, but during my time, yeah, Dale Earnhardt was definitely the guy that you knew you were going to have to race every week.
So if I'm a everyday person watching the show, and you know, NASCAR's been criticized, but it's just one big left-hand turn. What do you tell that person who just watching it, flipping on the TV, what they need to be looking for in the race? What aren't they seeing that they should be looking for so they can understand the kind of the nuances of NASCAR racing? Well,
first I'm going to say, hey, we go right and left, and I won 3 road course races, so we can do both. Believe me, in today's world, there's a lot of great road racers in NASCAR. Yep. Back when I was winning, there was maybe a couple handfuls, but now, boy, there's a bunch out there. So they're very good, very competitive. Well, Jamie McMurray, yep, he won the 24-hour race with a couple teammates, so that proves it. And the young boy.
What are we seeing? I mean, let's just think about Daytona or even the cookie cutter tracks today. What makes one car go faster than the other? Maybe that's simple as that, what the viewers are trying to understand.
2 things. One is the driver, sure, of course. You need a good driver in a good car, and you go fast. The team puts the car together. They put the spring shocks, the combination, the engineers, they assemble all that for the driver. Now, the driver has to go out there and tell him if it's right or wrong, and that's one way a good driver separates himself from the others. He tells better.
So they're good communicators with their crew chief to make those adjustments. Okay.
But then when you get on the track, you know, the driver, he's in control, and you know, you have to manage tires, you have to manage your car, you have to manage the way the track changes, you have to manage your competition. You're always looking to see who's where and what, and you have no timeouts and no time to relax. You're always trying to calculate what you need to do.
And so, again, when guys, you're watching TV and it says they put a tire adjustment on and they put 2 extra pounds, most people are going to say, what's 2 pounds of pressure? What does that do when you add pressure, for example?
Well, in today's world, with the tires they're using, it changes the stiffness of the tire. In the old days, they had a different type of tire. You could change the size of the tire, but you can't do that today. The tires are so stiff. So that just changes like the spring rate of the tire. The tire is actually part of the suspension. Okay. So that air pressure just adjusts that. And of course, they turn the screws on top of the springs and do all those sorts of tricks to make it better. And sometimes they work, sometimes don't. Because cars are fickle. I mean, you think you know what you need to change, what adjustment you need to make, and you make it. It works just the opposite. So that's why a guy can be running good, a car, and a driver can be doing really good, and they make a little adjustment. He goes out there and doesn't run good.
Well, you were saying before getting into right and left turns. There's a couple races right now in the circuit at 36. 2 are on road courses. Do you think they should go to more road courses?
A lot of drivers would like to have more. Yeah, they sure would, but there's not enough weekends in the year. Yep. You know, everyone wants a NASCAR race, and we have to give these crews a little time off, a little break, sure, and the drivers, but drivers would race every weekend of the year if they could.
If you can race on any track in the current NASCAR circuit, where do you want to be racing?
Well, Daytona is the race that everyone wants to win, and I've won it once.
That's right.
Come close several other times, so I'm very fortunate. Daytona is a great place. Everyone wants to come to Daytona and race, but I really enjoy the tougher tracks like Darlington, like Bristol, Dover. Those tracks are tough physically, mentally, and you don't have time to hardly breathe. So I love that kind of track because that's where a driver can really separate himself from the other guys. If you're tougher mentally, you're going to be better at the end of the race. If you're tougher physically, you're going to be better at the end of the race. So they're the kind of tracks I really enjoyed.
As we're getting ready for Daytona, Jeff Gordon's final season.
Yeah.
So when I say Jeff Gordon, what do you think?
Excellence. He's a great person, has a foundation, gives a lot. I mean, that's how I judge a person. I don't judge them by how many races they've won. I judge them by what they've done with that success. And he's done a lot of really, really good things for people. So he's a top person to
Well,
me.
I've got to tell you that I started to get into NASCAR a little bit in 1999. Went to a race in Atlanta, and I like to see what people do kind of behind the scenes, kind of like you did as well. And I watched Jeff Gordon handle the interview with the press. Of course, a real professional. I think he's going to be the next announcer. But what I found really impressive about him is that after the interview was over, he kind of shooed the press away. And there at the side of his trailer were probably about 4 or 5 kids with cerebral palsy, some physical difficulties. And I saw him take about 5 or 10 minutes each. One of the kids took pictures, signed everything. And I said, that's my driver. Yeah. And I always love that about NASCAR, that they treat their fans with respect. Definitely. And it's really nice to see what they do behind the scenes is what they do in front of the camera as well. Exactly. Well, so who's the next Jeff Gordon?
Well, Chase Elliott's going to be in that car, and he could be. There's no question. He's talented, great, polite, great speaker. You know, he had a great upbringing with his dad, his uncles. He doesn't talk with that accent like a dad, which was cute. But so yeah, he could be. And there's so many young people coming up through. But I'm putting my money on him. I've seen him race. He's very, very good.
And a lot of people talk about Kyle Larson, but it's exciting to see the next wave coming through.
Well, and yeah, he's really good too. He's with a good team with Ganassi, Dave Blaney's boy. Okay. Ryan, he's very talented. So yeah, there's not just one or two. There's several coming up that are could fit in that mold of a Jeff Gordon.
Well, before we get into break, couple of names. Richard Petty.
Well, he was my hero growing up. I had an uncle that raced. Of course, he was my hero too. But in the big leagues, it was Richard Petty. I wanted to model my career after him, and he was always great to race fans. And so I enjoy saying hi to race fans and signing those autographs. And one story about Richard, we were coming back from a roast up in North Carolina. A gentleman that used to work for Champion Spark Plugs. And so I'm following Richard Petty home, my wife and I are, and Richard was all alone, and going down a 4-lane road, he passed a car. That car sped up and passed him back, then slowed down. Well, Richard passed him again. The guy did the same thing and slowed down again. I said, that guy doesn't know who he's messing with. Well, later, in a few years later, Richard bump drafted somebody in North Carolina and kind of cost him his political career.
That's right.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, he's a racer.
He's a racer, on and off the track.
Tony Stewart.
Tony, I put him in the league of A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti because he's driven a lot of different types of cars and he's won in everything. Yep. So he's one of those guys. That's what they did. And so, you know, here lately he had a tough go of it, but, you know, proven innocent of everything that happened on that little short track. I remember when Tony was getting started, we were at Loudon, New Hampshire, and he was leading this race. He was going to win, ran out of gas. So, and I had a problem with my car, so I'm walking back to my car to leave, and here comes Tony, and oh man, I said, Tony, wait a minute. Now he was new in NASCAR. I said, look, you're a great driver. You have a great team. They didn't run you out of gas on purpose. You got to realize that. That was a mistake. We all make mistakes, right? Yeah. I said, so calm down and thank them for all the hard work they do to you, but I'll guarantee you, you're going to start winning races. Hey, I'm a genius. He's winning races.
Well, you said a lot of nice things about some folks. Who are some folks or an individual you didn't find so favorable, not only on the track or maybe off?
Oh, now wait a minute. The thing I don't like about racing is the red flag or the black flag. That means you got to get out. You know, I like everybody that does their job. Even a guy at the gate that gives you a hard time if you don't have the right credential. Sure. You know, a lot of people get mad. Ah, you know who I am? I say, hey, thanks for doing your job. I need the right deal to get in. I understand that. So I'm not. Once you get to know me, you're going to find out I'm a little different. I don't dislike anyone. I appreciate when they do a good job, even if it means throwing me out.
Sure. Bill France.
Well, senior?
Senior.
Senior, yeah. What a great gentleman. He had this idea of racing, and and put it all together, along with a lot of other great people. But he was the leader, and he treated. I'm a Yankee, and he was still active when I first came down, and he treated me with respect, and he really showed me, at least I believe he did, that he cared that I was here, that I was part of the show. So a lot of respect for him, yeah. He's the whole family.
And we've talked a lot about Dale Earnhardt Sr., Dale Earnhardt Jr.
He calls me sir. You know, I saw him when he was growing up. He played with my kids, so he looks at me and goes, sir. I said, Dale, quit calling me sir. That makes me feel old. Well, you are. Well, he's right. But he's a, you know, what a great kid. Yeah. I call him a kid because he's younger, but he's a man. And talented. Yeah, and he admitted he went through a period where he didn't care. But he's back caring. Last year was a great year for him, and this year I think is going to be even better. But yeah, talented guy, and he's got a lot big shoes to fill. You know the name, but he's doing a really good job with that. And
our last one, Danica Patrick. Will she ever make the Cup playoffs?
Isn't she a cutie? Woo! She could be my daughter, though. I mean, will she make the playoffs? I hope so. Now look, when I was driving, if a woman had ever beat me, I would have quit right then. You know, that's how I feel. I had a girl drive for me in the truck series when I owned my own team, so I'm not a chauvinist. I love you girls, you women, I really do. I'm not sure what to call them, girls or women. I get confused, but I call them both. Danica, talented, she's driven, she wants to be here, she wants to do it, and it's up to her. I can't tell you if she's going to do it or not. I hope she does. I hope she beats the boys, because I'm not out there.
Well, is there any one thing, if you could change in NASCAR right now, that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I like to be out there. Bring that age limit up a little bit, or whatever. But yeah, you know what happens in everything. It's life. As you get older, you get replaced, and the young kids are coming in, moving guys like myself out, and that's. I was a young guy once and moved somebody out. So. But yeah, I like to be back out there and do the little racing. You know, I think I still have it.
Well, I see you all the time on YouTube, and I like watching those races.
Yeah.
Well, Geoff, thanks for joining us, and we're going to have the Congressman join us in a few minutes, talk some more racing. But thanks for joining us. Great shop, and thanks for the hospitality.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Geoff. We'll be right back with Congressman Bill Posey.
I love appliances. Appliance Direct. The biggest Maytag washer ever. 21 pairs of jeans. That's all of them. 21 bath towels. That's all of them. It's huge. And the dryer is certified to sanitize children's toys. Appliance Direct, over $200 below what wacky new retailers can advertise. The Maytag 980 with a power wash. Appliance Direct, thank you.
Do you have agonizing back pain? Considering back surgery, fusion, discectomy, or decompression? Traditional open back surgery requires large incisions, screws, and metal hardware, long hospital stays, and months of therapy. There is a safer, more natural solution. With only a 1/4-inch incision, Duke Laser Disc Repair uses state-of-the-art precise laser technology. So as early as the next day, you can be driving and back to your life. Contact Duke Spine Institute today and get back in motion.
Welcome back, and most importantly, thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. We're excited to bring you great ideas, new people, and more importantly, incredible stories about Brevard County and its citizens. My next guest is our United States Congressman from the 8th Congressional District, Congressman Bill Posey. For those who don't know, Bill and I served in the state Senate right next to each other on the floor of the Senate. And I must say, without doubt, I would not have been the president of the Senate without his support, but most importantly, his wisdom. Whenever I was learning or kind of getting my feet wet in the state Senate, he would always whisper over to me words of wisdom so that I would not make those unforced errors and we can make good decisions together, and he allowed me to become the president of the Senate. And so it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Congressman Bill Posey. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Motorsports, something you and I share a great passion for, and just glad we're with Daytona 500 champion tonight. It's a wonderful place to be.
I was listening to the interview with Geoff, and I didn't want you to stop. I mean, I remember when he came south, he was one of the first Yankees, one of the first Northerners to come down into this Southern sport and turn it upside down. And those were in the days when you didn't get a ride because you had a big sponsor or a rich daddy. You had to know how to put a race car around the track without power steering, and all the frills that they have today. And Geoff is a man. He had it. He did a great job, and it's just so good to hear his stories and his successes.
Well, this is what it's all about, learning about folks and made something happen.
I remember him talking when he came down and started racing here. They didn't allow women in the pits. Remember that?
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
The world has changed. Well,
yes,
look,
indeed.
I know your history well. We've been friends for 15 years. But one of the things that always amazed me, you saw Daytona from the sand right to the super speedway. Tell us about that experience as a child.
I was 10 years old, and my father took me to the last race they had on the beach, won by Paul Goldsmith. I was a little kid, and obviously, and I remember we were in the infield on the north turn, where I was yesterday, by the way, and the only place you could really see the crowd was some scaffolds, and there was a scaffold in the infield right there, and a bunch of guys about 2 layers up on the scaffold. Come on, kid, come on up here. But I was too scared to get up on that scaffold. I was afraid I would fall down. Like I said, I was just a little kid. I don't remember seeing any of the kids there. And later on in life, I thought, you know, if everybody lived the same number of years, I might be the last person alive that saw the race on the beach, because I didn't just see any of the young people there. But it was pretty thrilling. And then, of course, we went to the first Daytona 500 the next year, and the next 10 500s in a row. And that was pretty exciting, too. I mean, in those days, I think the first Daytona 500 had 30,000 people there. I saw an aerial photograph not very long ago, and I could pick out where my dad and I were, you know, and you could back your car right up to the fence behind the bleachers back in those days. I mean, we thought it was a big event, but by today's standards, it was, you know, little stuff.
Well, you obviously caught the bug. I mean, racing motorcycles, racing cars, you bought astronauts' cars. I mean, you're a gearhead, to say it kindly.
Yeah, I'm a car guy. You know?
Car guy. I mean, you were making that decision as a youngster. You had opportunities to go to Europe, to go race. Yeah. What really got you into that sport? Was it your dad? Was it just a thrill watching it in person? What got you into the motorsports?
Well, when I was a kid, we moved to Florida when I was in the 3rd grade. But so before that, when we lived in Los Angeles, my dad would take me to the races. That's, you know, what we like to do. We go to Culver City was favorite track, and Ascot. Which was, until recently, still a pretty good little racetrack out there. And I just always loved watching it. And then we moved to Florida, and we started going to the racetracks in Orlando at Sunbrook Speedway, then Orlando Raceway, and then Bithlow and O'Galley Speedway or whatever, and Melbourne Speedway. And you watch that stuff enough, and you'll want to do it. My biggest unfilled passion or ambition in my entire life is I was never able to have a quarter midget. You know, that was just really for the rich kids.
Okay.
And but that's what I wanted. More than anything I've ever wanted in my whole life. I wanted to race that bad, and I had to wait till I was about 15 and saved up $50 from mowing lawns and stuff to buy my first race car.
Well, you did it. You did it. Well, you did it in a remarkable. Geoff was talking about earlier. You went from the small tracks to the big tracks, and you've done the same thing in politics. You've made it from the city council now to the United States Congress. What was the key component that allowed you to move up from the kind of small-time politics to now big-time Washington?
Yeah, it's still a mystery to me, Mike. It really is. I never aspired to be involved in politics. I never thought very much of politicians. It's kind of hard to explain, and people say, well, what guides you? And I just try and represent the people who elect me like I would expect them to represent me. It's not simple. Yep. I mean, it's not difficult. It's very simple, and if there's a default to a vote, if it's really a tough vote or figuring out how to do something, it's just I say, well, you know, how my grandkids want me to do this. Mm-hmm. You know, when they look back someday and say yes was the right vote or no was the right vote, and that's really simple. Keep it simple. Well,
and before you entered politics, you found tremendous success in business, and what did you learn those skills to find success in business? What did you learn maybe on the racetrack, from your father, your parents, from your church? What were the key ingredients that made you success in business before you even entered the political field?
Well, I remember my father just always told me, you know, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well. You know, at the time when you're a little kid, you hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really mean anything. But subliminally, maybe it does something that makes you want perfection. Mm-hmm. You know, what's good for today is your standard tomorrow. Yep. And so you just want to always make sure that standard today is one that you want to keep. That's the short version.
Well, I know some of the real estate dealers are actually buying racetracks. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was part of your acumen, not just here in Florida, but across the country, I understand.
Yeah, I've listed and sold racetracks in 35 states.
Well, and it's just because you're passionate for the sport, you knew the land. What got you into that angle?
Well, I owned a racetrack one time in Melbourne, and I learned through that and the acquisition to go get another one that people have a hard time buying and selling racetracks for some unique reasons we don't have time to go into right now. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, you know, I can do a company that will fix all those problems for people. Mm-hmm. And it did, and so it rewarded me pretty good. I mean, you know, some racetracks sell for a lot of money and the commissions are really nice. And so it actually allowed me to up my racing game from being the poorest kid on the racetrack to, you know, getting mediocre. And so.
Well, you and I have talked a lot about racing, but as politics, that's a heck of a leap to go from really successful real estate business in general, to going into politics. Well, what kicked you into politics? What put you over the line where you wanted to say, I'm going to go run for the city council?
Again, it's all by default. It's nothing that I ever expected to do. And I went to a city council meeting. Long story, short version, really didn't like what happened there. Mm-hmm. Didn't like what I saw. Mm-hmm. Happened 3 times, and people started saying, hey, you need to, and so it went on, and I ended up getting involved in it. Didn't want to, little bit of spiritual leading in it. If we had time to go into the story, but too many dominoes falling for anything to be a coincidence. Same thing for the state legislature. You know the story about that, and you know I never aspired to go to Congress, but it just, you do what you think you have to do, and sometimes you get moved into these positions whether you're looking forward to it or not.
Sure, sure.
Like in the racetrack, you don't always, once the green flag falls and you're in the race, you know, can't control what everybody else is doing. You just control what you're doing.
That's for sure.
Well, one of the things that you've done at Remarkable Job is putting kind of Florida racing on the map, especially making sure a lot of other folks know about it. One of my favorite times, of course, is actually going to the Governor's Cup race. And as we described it well, we went to a fight and a race broke out. Yeah. What's the magic of a Saturday night or a Friday night at the racetrack?
Well, it's electric. I mean, it's electric. There's a lot of passion, a lot of hard work, a lot of aggression. You don't find much passivity there. Mm-hmm. The meek may inherit the earth, but they're not going to inherit the racetrack. You know, I mean, it's not going to be there. And it's just like I say, you went to a race and a fight broke out. It's like going to a boxing match. I mean, a lot of testosterone, and you know, it's exciting, and it's fast, and it moves fast, and there's this primal appeal that some of us have for that, and it's like gladiators in days of old or whatever, you know. Just, it's fun, man. The most fun you can have with your clothes on.
I go there for the hot dogs and the popcorn.
Well, you talk about in the arena politics again. You know, I've got to. When we had the toughest issues when I was in legislature, we had this little elections problem in 2000, and then a few years later we had problems with hurricanes. It seems like you get handed all the hot potatoes in the legislature. What was it like handling the post-2000 election laws to make sure that Florida was no longer called Florida, duh?
Well, you were there. It took a lot of work.
Well, you were leading the charge.
And we had to be innovative. We did some things that the leader of the Senate, leader of the House, and the governor's office didn't particularly care for at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But at the end, I came up with a package that most other states have copied now. Mm-hmm. Didn't allow the touch screens, by the way. I said those would be problematic. Yeah. But everything else we adopted, the provisional ballot to save time, and precinct-based optical scanners to make sure everybody's vote counted, and everybody should feel confident their vote counted, were adopted by most other states eventually. And to pass an elections package, reforming the code after Bush Gore, that passed unanimously, Democrats and Republicans all favoring your product, it was pretty fulfilling, Mike.
Well, and rightfully so. And now you're going to this new arena. Washington, D.C., as it's called, dysfunctional. Yeah. What was the adjustment being made there? You're going from the legislature in Florida, of course, the 3rd largest state now, to go into the Washington. What's the difference, if you could describe, between Tallahassee and Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's still golf. but it's a really huge, treacherous course. And the legislature maybe was kind of like playing the sweet little country club of Brevard. Everybody loves that, you know, very friendly course. You don't lose many balls. Everybody has a good time, gets a good score, feels good about it after the game. And I don't know what might be the most treacherous course, but that's the kind of golf it is up there. And so very dysfunctional, very alienated. Issues are very big. There's not a whole lot of middle ground. People want this country to stand for opportunity, and people want this country to stand for entitlements. And the entitlement people don't want to compromise with the opportunity people and vice versa. And that's kind of the fundamental difference on every issue.
And being there, you've made a huge sacrifice to be there. It's a tough job, as you describe. It's in the arena. Is there, if there's one issue that you try to focus on more than anything else as you serve the people here in Brevard County?
The fundamental issue, the underwriting issue on everything is accountability. Yeah. Just be accountable. Try and make it accountable. Try and make the positions be accountable. Try and make people account for the positions that they take, and try and set policy that's going to be accountable. And
if you could change one law, do you have one? Is it Obamacare? Is it balanced budget amendment? If you could change one thing.
Well, it'd be about a dead heat between the two that you mentioned. And I was in a position to actually force a vote to the floor in my second term on a balanced budget amendment. And we got a majority in the House, but we didn't have the supermajority required for a constitutional amendment. And I believe Obamacare, we will see it repealed and probably replaced with just the three things that were wrong with our healthcare system that initiated it. And
with that being said, the Brevard County, a lot of people think about space. I mean, 15 years ago, they thought it might be the end of space with the end of the shuttle program. What do you see as the future of space for Brevard County and, of course, Florida?
Well, it's looking sure better. It's looking a whole lot better than it did 3 years ago, looking better than it did 2 years ago. There's obviously a shortage of funding right now. We don't have the funding to do what we want to do. And the biggest problem is having people aware of the importance of the space program. People on the Space Coast don't appreciate the importance of the space program. They don't understand how necessary it is to the economic security of this country. They don't understand how important it is to the national security of this country. They don't understand how important it is to the survival of our species. I mean, I used to talk about the potential of an asteroid strike every 30,000 years, and people used to look at me funny, and one media guy said, "You're just trying to scare people, you know." And I finally got vindicated when we had this relatively small asteroid implode 1,000 miles from the closest living person in Russia and injured 1,200 people. I mean, and there was no way to detect that. So, or we had not done what it took to detect it.
Well, and as you look forward, and you've come across politicians from Lawton Chiles to Jeb Bush, Charlie Crist, now, of course, our new governor, Rick Scott. Give me a taste of it. So when I say the name Lawton Chiles, what comes to mind, former governor?
Nice guy. I got along good with Lawton. And former senator, he was wise, intuitive. We disagreed on some issues, but I like Lawton Chiles.
And how about the next governor, maybe the next president of the United States, Jeb Bush?
Same Jeb every day, never wavered. Jeb started each day and ended each day the same. You know, so many people, and you were there, Mike, for many years. Change in the process, their principles change. Jeb's were the same every day, and that says a lot for somebody who was a governor for 2 terms, that they never strayed off their principled path.
And I'll give you a nice contrast, Charlie Crist.
Charlie Crist was principled too. He carried a windsock in this hand and a thermometer in this hand, and wherever they intersected, that was his principle of the day. And so.
Makes sense, makes sense. Well, you're now dealing with the President of the United States. Have you had much interaction with him? What is it like dealing with the President?
Unbelievable. Like dealing with someone who believes we don't need Congress because they have a a pen and a telephone. Someone who is a constitutional law professor that thinks they should be able to unilaterally do whatever they want.
Well, let's just say it's challenge time. When we come back, we're going to talk with Geoff and yourself about racing again, talking about the upcoming season and kind of where we're going. But Congressman, appreciate your time and valuable insights. Most importantly, thanks for helping a young blonde-haired kid who likes to surf a lot be more successful in the state Senate.
I think I learned more from you than you did from me.
You're generous. We'll be back. First, we're going to hear some words from our sponsors and then come back and talk with our Congressman and Geoff about the upcoming season.
Do you have agonizing back pain? Considering back surgery, fusion, discectomy, or decompression? Traditional open back surgery requires large incisions, screws, and metal hardware, long hospital stays, and months of therapy. There is a safer, more natural solution. With only a 1/4-inch incision, Duke Laser Disc Repair uses state-of-the-art precise laser technology. So as early as the next day, you can be driving and back to your life. Contact Duke Spine Institute today and get back in motion.
I love appliances. Appliance Direct. The biggest Maytag washer ever. 21 pairs of jeans. That's all of them. 21 bath towels. That's all of them. It's huge. And the dryer is certified to sanitize children's toys. Appliance Direct. Over $200 below what wacky new retailers can advertise. The Maytag 980 with a power wash. Appliance Direct. Thank you.
Well, welcome back, and thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible, learning from living legends here in Brevard County about racing, about politics, and a mixture of the two. Let's talk about the upcoming season in NASCAR. It's a big year. We've gone through our first change in the point system. First question for each of y'all, what do you think of the new point system? Congressman?
I'm okay with the new point system. I'm not okay with the new qualifying system.
I think a lot of people learned that a couple of days ago, exactly. Geoff, what do you think of the new point system?
No, I was very skeptical of it when they came out with it, but the way I think of it, whoever thought of it's a genius. It really did add a lot of interest to NASCAR racing towards the end of the season. You know, the chase, it's kind of like basketball. You get eliminated if you don't win, if you don't place. The qualifying, definitely at Daytona, Talladega, they need to readjust that. At the other tracks, it's quite interesting the way that goes. But here what we saw a few days ago at Daytona was embarrassing, to say the least.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look to improve that. But I got to admit, I love the playoffs. I mean, my kids know I like NASCAR, but they kind of tune in and out. Reagan likes Danica Patrick. Hayden likes Jeff Gordon. So does Alexis. But the intensity of those last few races last year, especially with Gordon and Keselowski and the heat that they all felt trying to get to become the Final Four, I think the France family and Brian was a genius to get that going because, as you said it best, Geoff, the last few seasons before that, you'd have a guy who was pretty much going to win the championship. And
boring.
Yeah, and I got to admit, it probably cost Jeff Gordon a couple championships, even though he's my guy. But I think the intensity is back, and I think you're going to see the viewers tune back in for that playoff season as well.
Well, hopefully, without a doubt. Yeah.
Well, with that said, let's go early through the season. We'll conclude with your picks for the season champ. But who's going to be surprising this year, Geoff, in NASCAR? Who do you think is going to kind of come out and do a lot better than people anticipate? And maybe a driver that's maybe who's not going to do as well as people think?
Yeah, I know better to bet on a race. If it's a horse race, car race, or a foot race. You know, so many things can happen. You know, in racing, a lot of things can happen, just a parts failure. And there's several parts in a race vehicle. So it's so hard to pick a winner.
Who would you like to see do well this year?
Oh, well, that's a better question. I like that question. Okay. I'm a fan of Joey Logano, and there's a reason why. He and his dad, Tom, and his dad and his mom, they support the Paralympic program in hockey. They make the skates, the boards that the hockey teams players use, and they're in ice skating and have an ice skating rink in Charlotte, and they let them come there and practice. And oh, by the way, our hockey team has won the Paralympics for the last 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. So they're good people, is what I'm saying, and they help me and my people with our Geoff Bodine bobsled project. They give us a spot in their shop for our equipment, for our building and stuff. So yeah, I'm a Joey Logano fan.
Well, he's on the rise. He had a great season last year.
And he could be the champion. Yeah, he came close this year, last year, and this year could be the day, the year that he goes all the way.
How about yourself? Who would you like to see do well this year?
Well, I'd like to see Kyle Larson win a race or two this year at least, and one of the great new young bloods coming up in NASCAR.
Yeah. Well, I got to admit, you know, as again a Gordon fan last season, he's on the pole for the 500, which is always nice to see, even though it's a quirky format to get there. And he was so close last year. I've got to think that he's going to have another big season, and hopefully he'll get to at least the Final Four, because I love that. I mean, it was amazing watching the races last year. All four drivers were literally running 1, 2, 3, 4 in the final few laps. I mean, that's what everyone was envisioning and kind of where it's going. Also talking about this year, does Danica Patrick win a race this year?
I don't see it in the cards.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I'm pulling for her.
Yeah,
I really am, because she has that real passion to be out there, and you know, we all do and say stupid things, and she's included. But you know, I think we've all done that. But she is good for the sport, and when she wins, not if, when she wins a race, the sport is going to explode.
Well, and you know, you guys know racing a heck of better than I ever will. What kind of track would she win on, you think? Was it super speedway? Is it a short track? Where's she going to win, you think, if she wins?
Super speedway.
Super speedway.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's her best opportunity. Talladega. Daytona's a little tougher track, but either one she could win at. She almost did here a couple of years ago at Daytona.
It would be good, and like Jeff says, I'd really like to see her win for the sport, but she got a new crew chief, and sometimes it takes some time to build up there, and she's still relatively inexperienced, you know. So
wait a minute, that crew chief used to work for me, so he's good. Yeah. No, he did. Tony Gibson. Yeah, he was on my team.
For a while,
yeah.
But it takes a while to get that chemistry, and Jeff's talking a little while ago, you know, you need to have a good car and a good driver, but we all know what made Jeff Gordon good, and it was Ray Abraham.
Oh, and Rick Henrik gave them everything they needed. So yeah.
And Geoff will be the first to tell you, people think you drive race cars with your foot, but you really don't. You drive race cars with your head. And the fastest race car, when you make all these adjustments on these cars, the fastest race car isn't the person with the heaviest foot, you know, and it's not the person who has the best crew chief, necessarily. There's probably a multiple of 10,000 adjustments you can make on those cars when you look at the different adjustments and the multiple of them, but whichever driver is best able to communicate with that crew chief and make the most correct adjustments out of those 10,000 to the thousandths is going to be the fastest car, all else being equal. Sure. And it takes a while to develop those skills, you know.
And we were talking earlier about Dale Earnhardt Sr. Now, it seems like the new bad boy of racing is Keselowski, especially after his incidents last year. What's going to happen on the track this year? You know, you've been inside those tracks. Is something going to happen to Keselowski this year? Because it seems like there's so much angst and animosity built up with his actions from the last few years.
Well, you know, race drivers have pretty good memories, so they remember what happened a year ago, 2 years ago. And you know, no, they don't purposely go out there to do anything to another driver. But if an opportunity comes up to mess that guy up, to block him, to interfere with his success of that race, it could possibly happen.
And you talk about a lot about give and take. He's not going to get much give from the other drivers, in this to say.
Yeah, he has that problem to deal with. Yeah, he's the tough guy, and he takes a lot. And so are they going to give? Probably not much. Yeah, you know, but you know, when you come down to the last few laps at Daytona, Talladega, no one gives. It's all take. So stay tuned. It's going to be exciting for sure.
Well, anybody have any predictions for the 500?
You know, if you had to just pick one car, I'd love to see Gordon go out winning that thing and winning the championship. What a good way to exit the sport and a legacy to set down. But
I've been there. I've been through some good days and bad days, tough days and not as tough. But he's going to go through a good day. And a lot of people are pulling for him, not just race fans, people in charge. Yeah, what would that do to the sport? That would fill the grandstands for the next race, the next several races, maybe all year long, to see how many races he's going to win. Is he going to be that champion? And yeah, what a way to go out for him, but what a way to end the season for NASCAR. So if I was a betting man, I'd be putting my money on the 24 car.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people root for that in general. And at the end of the season, there's going to be 4 drivers at Homestead back here in Florida, racing for the Cup. Any thoughts on who those 4 drivers might be? You sound like you want Logano. Sounds like you all want Gordon there. Who else is probably going to be in that foursome?
Yeah, it's pretty early to tell. You know, we don't know how Tony Stewart's going to run on the other tracks. We don't know about Kenseth. We don't know about Ryan Newman. Look what he did. He snuck in there and almost won the championship. So there's ask me in about 6-7 races down the road, then I might have a better idea.
Who would you like to see there, Bill, besides?
Well, you have to think, because they always manage to get on top of their game somehow, that Johnson's going to be in it too. So you get at least 2 of the Hendrick cars I think are going to be in it. I think you're going to have Gordon in it, if you have to pick now. I mean, you know, you're picking from 50 different teams, and it's way out. But, you know, it's trying to guess the Yankees win-lose record, you know, before the season starts.
You might as well put all the numbers in a fishbowl and just start drawing 4 out, because that's how unpredictable it is.
Well, and I think that new format makes that a reality. Well, I had asked Geoff before about different racetracks where he liked to race and so forth. Do you have a favorite racetrack, Bill?
Yeah, I always like just the 3/8 mile at Orlando, and then the half mile or 5/8 mile at New Smyrna, I guess, where Geoff raced there a lot too.
Yeah, and when you're racing on concrete versus or asphalt versus dirt, I mean, Jeff Gordon grew up on dirt. He became very successful. What advantages does that give you when you learn how to drive a car on dirt? So when you make that transition to asphalt?
Yeah, I grew up on dirt. Yeah, I love dirt racing, and yeah, it gives you car control with the throttle. You know, everyone thinks you just control where the car goes with the steering wheel, but on dirt you use the throttle, the brake and the throttle to set the car and then control it through the corners. And every once in a while on asphalt, you know, we get sideways, and so the guy that has the best control of that situation is hopefully not going to wreck. And you can see who can do that. I was always very fortunate about that. I lost a car coming off the corner at Daytona in a qualifying race. I just blew by Earnhardt before restrictor plates. It was the year I won, actually. And I came into pits and I didn't hit anything. And Bill France came over to me and said, "Hey, Lucky, how you doing?" I said, "What do you mean lucky?" He said, "Well, that was just luck. You didn't hit anything over there." I said, "Come on, Bill, that was complete and unadulterated skill." And he just laughed. He called it, "You're still lucky." So yeah, a lot of times you're luck saving a car, but a lot of it comes from that dirt track experience of controlling moving a car with the throttle.
Well, and I remember, Bill, you and I actually, at your house one time, actually played a video game, and I can say it like, he crushed me. And I might have grown up with video games, and he crushed me in the video game. But now it seems like the younger folks are learning how to race with these video games, where I understand Junior and others even race online against folks from around the country. You think that's just a new wave because the kids aren't getting the time on the dirt they like to used to?
You know, they've come out with some video games. Have you played some of these racing video games? I can feel it in the seat. I mean, I'm sitting on the couch and I can feel it in the seat. They're that good. The adjustments you can make on them, they're just that sophisticated. So yeah, it's going to make a whole lot of people better racers. Now, I don't know how realistic Daytona is because I never raced Daytona like you have. You know, you can address that. Well,
yeah, I was just in Vegas at the electronics show, and they had these simulators that are incredible. A whole bunch of television screens, and you're in a racing seat. They put the helmet, Hans device on, and you're in a race car. And that thing moves, it twists, it gives you G-force. It's amazing. Now, I didn't get in there because I didn't want to get embarrassed. I didn't want to get embarrassed. I'm not good at video games, and I didn't know, I never, never had tried one, so I didn't get in line and go. But it's incredible. It's out there, and these young guys are using that to learn the tracks and to actually hone their skills. Yeah,
you're hearing more and more about the younger drivers using that, so when they go to that track, they felt like they've been there before. Yeah. And I know I did the Richard Petty driving experience recently, and I didn't go 200 miles an hour, but I think 172, 173 miles an hour. And those who haven't experienced that feel coming into that turn, a lot of people, my kids, when they went to Daytona, they look at the track and they thought it was flat. Mm-hmm. And then they go to the track and they realize the banking on these things, and it just blew their mind. And when I told my son Hayden, who likes to do the race car video games, and when you go into that first turn, and it looks like you're driving into a building. I mean, with that height, and you come in there and you just hold your line. I think you got to experience it in person. Oh man, it is brutal, but it's a once in a lifetime feeling, and I can see what drives you. They do a great job. Yeah, they do a wonderful job with that Petty experience. Yeah. And I did it at Phoenix, and you didn't get that same vibe. It's a flat track. I can see why the variable banking is just so much more fun to drive. Yeah. Well, as we're getting ready to wind down, first I want to say thanks for taking the time. Taking a lot of time tonight, and I know the people are excited about hearing your opinions on racing, and maybe we'll come back in a couple months and see how your predictions are coming along, maybe some late night predictions. But we want to say thanks, Congressman, first for serving our state so well and our community, and Geoff, you've done a masterful job of really made a success here in Brevard County. We're glad to have you, and we're all excited to see your success in the future as well. So thanks for joining us on our first show. It's been a really enlightening experience, and we look forward to hearing your questions for our future guests. Again, gentlemen, have a great night, and thanks again for your time. We appreciate it. My pleasure. Good night.
The Mike Haridopolos Show is sponsored in part by Appliance Direct, Duke Spine Institute, SpaceCoastDaily.com, and Space Coast Medicine Magazine.